حصار شاهینشهر
jets targeting military and security targets in Iran. U.S. officials are also telling our team that the U.S. is firing Tomahawk missiles from Navy ships into Iran as part of this operation. Now, overnight, President Trump said major combat operations have begun, adding,
I'm looking at flight manifests from Islamabad International right now, and what I'm seeing shouldn't exist. A specialized U.S. State Department transport sitting on the same restricted tarmac as an Iranian government Airbus, while the world thinks they are on the brink of total war. This isn't a scheduled diplomatic summit or a publicized regional conference. At exactly 3:22 local time yesterday, a non-standard Gulfstream, registered to a holding company frequently used by the Central Intelligence Agency, touched down at Nur Khan Airbase. Within 90 minutes, a second aircraft carrying high-level representatives from Tehran's Ministry of Foreign Affairs bypassed the standard commercial terminal and was escorted by a triple-tier security motorcade to a secluded villa in the Margalla Hills. We are witnessing the most significant back-channel negotiation of the decade, occurring in a city that has suddenly transformed from a regional player into the world's most critical peace broker. If these talks fail, the red line for regional escalation is crossed by Monday morning. If they succeed, the global energy map is rewritten overnight. For months, the rhetoric between Washington and Tehran has been defined by threats of strikes and counterstrikes. Yet behind the scenes, 7 secret documents are currently sitting on a mahogany table in Pakistan's capital, documents that the mainstream media hasn't even smelled yet. Why did the CIA director land in a ghost plane 3 hours before the Iranians? And who is the third man in the room directing this symphony of shadows? The answers to these questions suggest that a massive geopolitical pivot is underway, one that could either prevent a catastrophic war or signal a fundamental shift in how the Middle East is governed. The pivot toward Pakistan as a mediator represents a stunning reversal in international relations. For years, Islamabad was often characterized by Western capitals as a problem child of the region, caught between its internal instabilities and its complex relationship with neighboring powers. However, in the last 48 hours, we have seen an unprecedented level of control exerted over the Pakistani capital. 14 specific security cordons have been established around the diplomatic enclave, creating a blackout zone where cellular signals are jammed and unauthorized movement is met with immediate detention. This level of operational security isn't for a standard meeting. It is for a survival summit. To understand why this is happening now, we have to look at the exhaustion of traditional channels. Qatar and Oman, the usual intermediaries, have seen their influence stretched thin or compromised by the sheer scale of the current tensions. Pakistan, with its unique position as a nuclear-armed state that maintains a functional, albeit tense, relationship with both the Pentagon and the Iranian Revolutionary Guard, has stepped into the light as the only actor capable of guaranteeing the safety of both delegations. Imagine the silence of that high-security villa in the Margalla Hills. The air is thick with the smell of expensive tobacco and the heavy realization among the participants that one wrong word triggers a carrier strike group in the Persian Gulf. The old guard of diplomacy has lost control, and a new, unpredictable power broker has stepped forward to manage the crisis. But it's not just diplomats in that room. There's a military presence that changes the entire nature of the peace they are discussing. The core of these secret talks is contained within 7 specific documents that outline a roadmap. Under this protocol, Iran agrees to pull back its fast attack craft and mine-laying vessels from the primary shipping lanes of the Strait of Hormuz. In exchange, the U.S. Navy has agreed to Zone B withdrawals, moving its most aggressive carrier-based strike assets further out into the Indian Ocean, effectively lowering the temperature in the world's most vital maritime choke point. Document number 2 addresses the Swift shadow. This is a highly controversial mechanism designed to allow Iranian oil payments to be processed through a specialized Pakistani clearinghouse. By using Pakistani financial infrastructure, these transactions bypass New York-based servers and the traditional SWIFT system, providing Iran with a much-needed economic lifeline while allowing the U.S. to maintain the public appearance of its primary sanctions regime. The third document is the Nuclear Sunset Clause. This isn't a permanent treaty but a 36-month verification freeze. Iran has reportedly agreed to halt its uranium enrichment at the 60% level in exchange for immediate access to $12 billion in frozen assets currently held in South Korean and European accounts. This buys the world 3 years of relative certainty, though it stops short of a full dismantling of the program. Document 4 is perhaps the most immediate in its impact: the proxy stand-down. It contains hard GPS coordinates in Iraq and Syria where non-state actors must retreat 50 kilometers from U.S. bases by the stroke of midnight on Sunday. Failure to comply would be seen as a breach by Tehran itself, not just the local militias. The complexity intensifies with Document 5, which focuses on refugee repatriation. This is a massive logistical plan to move 2 million Afghan and regional refugees across the Iran-Pakistan border. The goal is to stabilize the volatile frontier regions that have become breeding grounds for instability, using international funding to build stability hubs that keep these populations from flowing toward Europe or deeper into the Middle East. Document 6 establishes the Balochistan Border Security Pact. This is a joint intelligence sharing agreement between the CIA, the ISI, and Iranian intelligence to crush separatist movements that threaten the Chinese-funded trade corridor known as CPC. It is a rare moment of 3 intelligence agencies with wildly different goals finding a common enemy in the militants threatening the region's economic infrastructure. Finally, Document 7 is the End-State Protocol. This is the most terrifying blueprint of all because it outlines a new regional security architecture that it envisions a Middle East where security is managed by regional powers, Iran, Saudi Arabia, and Pakistan, underwritten by Eastern security guarantees rather than NATO-style interventions. This is information arbitrage in its purest form. While the evening news discusses the possibility of war, the people in that room are planning a world where the West's influence is permanently diminished. Wait, it gets worse. Document number 7 isn't about peace at all. It's about a new alliance that leaves Europe in the dark and shifts the center of gravity toward the East. The most shocking element of the Islamabad talks isn't the presence of Americans or Iranians, but the identity of the third man facilitating the dialogue. Pakistan isn't just hosting these talks as a neutral venue. They are acting as the primary representative for a shadow narrative involving Chinese security guarantees. Stop what you're doing and look at a map of the proposed trade routes connecting the Arabian Sea to Central Asia. This isn't just about Israel or Iran. It's about the $3 trillion trade route that Pakistan has effectively seized control of by positioning itself as the indispensable mediator. While the U.S. and Iran argue over enrichment levels and sanctions, the third man, representing the interests of Beijing's security apparatus, is offering the financial and military backing to ensure these deals hold. This is what experts call back-channel deconfliction. The reason the loudest voices in Washington and Tehran are the quietest in Islamabad is that they are being presented with a choice: accept a regional peace managed by the East, or face a regional war that no one can win. The pattern of these meetings suggests that the aha moment has already occurred for the diplomats involved. They realize the geopolitical puzzle pieces are clicking into a new, albeit terrifying, picture. The U.S. is being offered an elegant exit from its decades of Middle Eastern entanglement, but the price is the handover of regional influence to a coalition led by Islamabad and Beijing. Keep a close eye on this, because the timeline is accelerating. In fact, while we've been talking, the first asset shift has already begun, with financial flows moving toward Pakistani banks in anticipation of the SWIFT Shadow Protocol. For every peacemaker in the Islamabad villa, there are 10 spoilers with a finger on the trigger. The most significant resistance comes from Jerusalem. Analyzing the red line rhetoric from the Israeli government reveals a deep-seated fear that an Islamabad-brokered peace is a more existential threat than an open war. For Israel, a deal that allows Iran to keep its nuclear infrastructure, even if frozen at 60%, is a non-starter. There is a very real possibility that Mossad could view these secret talks as a signal. Then there is the Saudi discomfort. Riyadh has long viewed itself as the traditional power center of the Islamic world and the primary partner for U.S. security in the region. Seeing Pakistan take the lead, especially with Chinese backing, has caused quiet fury in the Saudi royal court. There is a risk of a petrodollar retaliation, where the Saudis could manipulate oil production or move away from U.S.-denominated assets to show their displeasure at being bypassed. In Washington, the situation is equally volatile. A brewing storm in Congress sees hawks from both parties labeling these secret talks as the Great Capitulation. They argue that the State Department is trading long-term security for a short-term pause, giving Iran the resources it needs to finalize its weapons program under the cover of a Pakistani-hosted peace. Even within Iran, the IRGC hardliners benefit from the status quo of managed chaos and are reportedly moving assets in Lebanon and Yemen to disrupt the very deal their own foreign ministry is currently negotiating. If just one of these factions moves tonight, the Islamabad villa doesn't become a cradle of peace. It becomes a high-value target for a disruption operation. As the talks enter their final phase, the level of tension has reached a breaking point. We must consider the Option 9 contingency, the classified response code within the U.S. military framework for what happens if the Iranian delegation doesn't return to Tehran by Sunday night, or if the talks are revealed to be a false flag to buy time for a preemptive strike. There is a dark military logic at play here. The night vision footage occasionally leaked from the outskirts of Islamabad shows Pakistani special forces surrounding the villa with an intensity that suggests more than just protection. Are they guarding the diplomats? Or are they effectively the jailers, ensuring that the risk of a black swan event, an assassination, a cyber attack on the venue, or a sudden escalation on the Israeli-Lebanese border is at an all-time high? This is the valley of the narrative, the moment of existential dread where the world is balancing on a razor's edge. We are waiting for the wind to blow in either direction. If Option 9 is triggered, it implies that the diplomatic window has slammed shut, and the assets currently withdrawn to Zone B would be ordered back into the Gulf at full combat readiness within 4 hours. But hold on, there's an even graver aspect I haven't disclosed yet. Something reportedly found in the trash of the U.S. Embassy in Islamabad that suggests the U.S. might be planning to double-cross the very mediators they are using. While the secret talks continue, the official statements from the State Department and Tehran's Ministry of Foreign Affairs remain stuck in a loop of denial and hostility. Publicly, the U.S. maintains that all options are on the table and that no high-level meetings are scheduled. Tehran, for its part, continues to broadcast images of its latest missile tests and defiant speeches from its clerical leadership. But the reality on the ground truth, tells a different story. Satellite imagery confirms that the flight paths of these ghost planes are being scrubbed from public tracking sites like Flight Radar 24, but they remain visible on military-grade transponder logs. Market data from the Karachi Stock Exchange shows a sudden, unexplained surge in liquid assets, suggesting that this swift shadow mechanism is already being tested in small batches. The Central Bank of Pakistan has signaled a major policy shift regarding foreign exchange reserves that perfectly aligns with the timeline of these secret meetings. The gap between what is being said in press briefings and what is happening in the Margalla Hills is a chasm. This is why we rely on leaked documents and flight tracking. In the world of high-stakes geopolitics, the truth is almost never found in a prepared statement. It is found in the fuel consumption of a transport jet and the sudden silence of a jammed communication zone. The evidence for these talks is now mounting beyond the point of reasonable doubt. Beyond the flight manifests, we have seen a series of financial flows that suggest the Document 2 clearinghouse is already operational. In the last 72 hours, over $400 million in equivalent value has moved through several non-standard accounts in Islamabad, many of which are linked to the very Pakistani officials hosting the summit. Furthermore, satellite imagery shows a distinct military posture shift across the region. In Iraq, several prominent proxy camps have seen a reduction in vehicle activity, with heavy equipment being moved toward the Iranian border, a direct correlation to the document for requirements. In the Persian Gulf, the U.S. Navy's Fifth Fleet has notably decreased its aggressive maneuvering drills, opting instead for long-range surveillance, patterns that place its carriers outside the immediate range of Iranian shore-based missiles. These aren't coincidences. They are the physical manifestations of the 7 secret documents being implemented in real time. If you watch the oil futures markets on Monday morning, you will likely see a sudden correction that reflects the insider knowledge that a supply disruption in the Strait of Hormuz is no longer considered a high-probability event. This is the market pricing in the success of the Islamabad talks before the public even knows they occurred. To truly understand the stakes, we must look at the internal dialogues within each capital. In Washington, the Biden administration is walking a tightrope. They need a foreign policy win to stabilize global energy prices, but they cannot afford to look weak in the face of Iranian aggression. For them, Pakistan is a convenient shield. If the talks fail, they can blame Islamabad's unreliable mediation. If they succeed, the U.S. takes the credit for peace through strength. In Tehran, the pragmatic wing of the government is fighting for survival. They know the Iranian economy cannot sustain another year of maximum pressure without risking a total domestic collapse. They are willing to trade proxy influence and a temporary nuclear freeze for the survival of the regime. For Pakistan, this is the ultimate gamble. By hosting these talks, they have positioned themselves as the indispensable nation of the 21st century, but they have also made themselves a target for any power, be it India, Israel, or internal militants, that wants to see the deal fail. The third man, representing Chinese interests, is the most patient of all. For Beijing, every hour that the U.S. and Iran are talking in a Pakistani villa is an hour where the U.S. is acknowledging that the old, Western-led order is no longer the only game in town. The long-term implications of an Islamabad peace are staggering. We are looking at the birth of a new regional security architecture. If Document 7 is fully realized, it means that for the first time since the end of World War II, a major Middle Eastern crisis was resolved without a European or American-led treaty. This shifts the diplomatic center of gravity from Geneva and Vienna to Islamabad and Beijing. It also signals a fundamental change in the petrodollar system. If Iranian oil can be traded through a Pakistani clearinghouse using non-dollar currencies, the U.S. loses its most powerful non-military weapon, the ability to bankrupt its enemies through the global financial system. This is why the hawks in D.C. are so terrified. This isn't just about stopping a war. It's about the erosion of the tools that have defined American hegemony for 80 years. Furthermore, the stabilization of the Iran-Pakistan border through the refugee repatriation and Balochistan security pacts creates a contiguous safety zone for the Belt and Road Initiative, allowing China to bypass the South China Sea entirely and move goods directly from the Arabian Sea into the heart of Eurasia. For the average viewer, the Islamabad shadow might seem like a distant chess game, but the effects will be felt at your local gas station and in your grocery bills within weeks. The primary consequence of these talks is the stabilization of the energy supply chain. If the Hormuz Guarantee holds, the war risk premium on oil will vanish, potentially leading to a 15% to 20% drop in global crude prices. This would provide immediate relief to struggling economies across the West and the global South. However, there is a darker side. The Swift Shadow Protocol could lead to increased volatility in the U.S. dollar as more regional trade moves into alternative currencies. For travelers, the stabilization of the region might eventually reopen corridors that have been closed for decades. But in the short term, you can expect increased security and cyber friction as the spoilers attempt to disrupt the deal through digital warfare and infrastructure sabotage. Security at international airports is already being tightened in response to credible threats from groups opposed to the Islamabad peace. You are watching the patterns they don't want you to see, and those patterns suggest to a villa in Pakistan than you ever imagined. Summarizing these 7 documents, it becomes clear that we are witnessing a surrender disguised as a masterstroke. The U.S. is surrendering its role as the sole regional policeman in exchange for a masterstroke of energy stability, and a way out of a war it cannot afford to fight. Iran is surrendering its short-term nuclear ambitions and proxy expansion for the masterstroke of regime survival and economic reintegration. I've tracked these movements for years, and we have never seen the US and Iran this close to a deal, or this close to a total betrayal of their own people's expectations. The old world order is officially dead, and the new one was born this week in a Pakistani villa. The prediction for Monday morning is a significant market shift that confirms everything we discussed today. There is one final document, leaked only minutes ago, that we are already seeing the asset shift in Pakistani financial data, which suggests that the people with the most to lose are betting on scenario 1. The Islamabad tripwire has been pulled. They want you to be afraid and distracted by the headlines, but I want you to be informed by the data. You are watching the patterns they don't want you to see, the ghost planes, the jammed signals, and the secret documents that are rewriting our world. How is this story being covered where you live right now? Are you seeing any mention of the Pakistani mediation, or is your local news still focused on the inevitability of war? Are you already seeing changes in local fuel prices or travel warnings in your area? The 7 documents are real, the planes are fueled, and the map has changed. The only question is, are you ready for what comes next? Subscribe and hit the bell. Don't be the last to know when the lights go out or when the new world order finally reveals its face. We'll continue tracking this situation as it develops throughout the weekend. See you in the next update.